I hope you all can see this presentation. Is it so? Can someone please tell me?
You can see.
Yes.
All right. This is the one I shared with Madhushankar last week. So I hope you all got this one. So we discussed about the first. I think it's like 50% of this presentation I discussed last week. So the rest of the part I'm going to discuss today. So the what we discussed last week, it is related to quantitative and qualitative both. I discuss about differences of quantitative research and the qualitative research, and then I focus more on qualitative research, and I explain how to do a qualitative research, how to choose a paradigm, and how to choose different approaches. I hope you can remember we discussed about ethnography, phenomenology, grounded theory, case study likewise. And today onwards, what I'm going to do, um, today I will discuss further this qualitative analysis as well, a little bit of qualitative analysis, as well as if any of you want to do mixed methodology, I will guide you and I will explain how to do that part as well. So meantime, if you have any questions, please do ask, then it's easy for me to explain things. So I think we talked up to here. And when you, I mean, these areas in the presentation, like these areas are a little bit in depth. So please ignore those parts if you're not familiar with this paradigm, epistemology, ontology, those parts. Please ignore that areas. We discussed these ones and that one done. Okay, these are the 5 different approaches actually I discussed last week. I hope you can remember a biographical life story, a phenomenology, a grounded theory, an ethnography, and case study research. So if you do a qualitative, if you plan to do a qualitative research, so you have to choose one approach out of this. So if you really want to do your thesis with a very easy way, I mean your dissertation with the easy way, I would suggest a case study approach. It is easy rather going to grounded theory, phenomenology, or anything else. So you can choose one case study or you can choose different cases, then it is multiple case studies. Okay, so but it is important to read more and see whether it is compatible with your research aim. So the research aim, your objectives and research questions, and your literature review and the methodology until analysis and discussion, it is everything is interconnected. And so as I discussed last week, always you have to check whether your research aim and your research methodology are matching. So research methodology, as I said last week, it is something like a way that you reach your research aim. So you have to find the best way. If you cannot find a suitable best way, you cannot achieve your research aim. So it's very important to focus on your research methodology and see whether you can achieve your aim based on the methodology that you decided to employ in your dissertation. So these areas I discussed last week. And other thing is that it is important to read already completed master thesis. So my master thesis, digital copy is already available in my research kit. So if you search Hanshika Herath in research kit, you can see my master thesis full copy is available at the moment. So you can download that one and have a look at it as well. But my master thesis actually it is quantitative study based on SPSS statistical analysis. So you can have a look at it as well. Yeah, I'll start from here. Actually, these areas also I discussed, but I think better to give further information regarding how to do a research and how to do a data collection and analysis. So if you want to do a quantitative study, so we do quantitative study in different ways. Like the most famous way is survey, because in quantitative studies, as I said last week, sample size is mm, it's a comparing to qualitative, it's a larger sample. But in qualitative, it's smaller sample size. So if you want to do a quantitative study, most of the researchers, they use surveys and they distribute a questionnaire. Even my master thesis, actually, I distributed a questionnaire, but every research there are limitations. So mine, yes, I had a big limitation as well. So it's my sample size is a little bit small, but it's more in depth. My questionnaire is very in depth. Because of that, I didn't focus much about the number, but it depends on your questionnaire. So if your questionnaire is narrow, so then you have to do a very good survey, collect more information. But in qualitative research, sample size is always small, because qualitative research, basically we do interviews, observations, focus group discussions. So in my PhD thesis, I did 28 interviews, and most of the interviews are like 2 hours, 3 hours long interviews. So that data, amount of data, it is huge. It is very in depth. That's why in qualitative we don't need to do too much of um, interviews or observations or focus group discussions. So it's very normal to have a less number of sample comparing to quantitative research. So in quantitative research, the way you collect your data, it's entirely depend on your research aim. So in my master thesis, yes, I distributed a questionnaire to front office employees working in Colombo five-star city hotels. So what I did, I developed the questionnaire. When you develop a questionnaire, you cannot develop as you wish. You cannot add whatever things you want to add. Your questionnaire must be based on the literature. So, and also you have to download, or you can find most of the some questionnaires already employed by previous researchers, or sometimes you can find questionnaires developed by previous researchers. So you can adapt those questionnaires, certain modifications, but you have to justify what areas you modified. So in that case, keep that in your mind. If you want to develop a questionnaire, it doesn't mean you develop a questionnaire completely a new one based on your insights. No, you can't do that. You have to develop a questionnaire based on literature. So it's very important because in the literature, in the methodology chapter, you have to, this is related to quantitative actually. So in the methodology chapter, you have to clearly discuss how you operationalized your questionnaire. In that case, you have to, if you can download my master thesis, you can see in the methodology chapter, there is a specific area called operationalization. So in the operationalization section, you have to clearly show how you develop those questionnaire and based on what literature, based on whose ideas, who's the author behind that question. So like, oh, what is the scale that I employed? Likewise, you have to provide a very good idea about how you develop your questionnaire. But in qualitative, actually, maybe you can have unstructured questions, or maybe you can have probes. So the probes are like, how to say, it's like you just have themes. So based on that themes, you guide the participants to talk. For an example, just imagine that in your research, you are doing a qualitative research, and your research is focused on guest experiences in resort hotels in down South Sri Lanka. So now you started your data collection and you met couple of guests and you're asking questions from them. Actually, you don't have questions because your study is qualitative. So to achieve your research aim, you have to frame your interview. So just imagine that now I'm doing a interview with a participant and I'm asking, how's your experience look like? So it's I give a chance for them to talk. If I ask a question like that, how's your experience look like? And it's a very broad question, isn't it? It's not like giving a 5-point Likert scale to rate something, but I ask a very general and very broad question. And then they can talk about different things. They can talk about safaris they had and pilgrimage sites that they visited, or they can talk about hotels and the people. Just imagine that my research is related to hospitality experience with people. Now they're talking about all that things like places they visited and now, and and after they're talking about, okay, we met very nice people at the train or along the beachside. Oh, now it's a time for me to guide them to achieve my research. So when they start to talk about people, I can ask, okay, so it seems like you had a good time with people. So why do you think these people are friendly and how you feel it? Likewise, now I guide them. I direct them to my research. Okay, that's how in qualitative research. This is just a one way actually. This is the way I use to collect data for my PhD research. So it's a one way. It's called probes. So we use probes. I didn't have any research, I mean, interview questions in my interviews. I just used probes. So the probes mean you initially develop some themes and then you direct or you guide the participants to talk about that themes. That means when they start to talk about the themes I already developed, I encourage them to talk more because just imagine that my research is related to people and hospitality, then I don't need to, I don't need to gain more knowledge or more information regarding the safaris they had or the food that they had or the pilgrimage sites visits. But because my study focus on people, so then I have to encourage them to talk more about people. Okay, so that's one way in qualitative research. So now you can see the difference in qualitative and quantitative. So the quantitative, before you go to the field, you develop your dependent and independent variables. And then you develop your hypothesis. And then you collect data and test those hypotheses. At the end of the day, you provide uh, or you prove whether your hypotheses are in an acceptable level or not. But in qualitative, you go into the field without having any predetermined ideas regarding your findings. So you're going to the field with open mind. You don't know what will be your results, so it's like very open minded. So if you like to do a research, like if you like to read more literature and develop your variables first and go to the field, then choose quantitative. But if you like to do more in-depth study regarding a particular phenomenon, then do a qualitative study. And in the case of mixed methodology, actually, last week also we discussed with one example, someone talk about his research related to hotel employees and managers. Yeah, it's a good example to actually to discuss about this mixed methodology. In the mixed methodology, you can employ both quantitative part and the qualitative part. So let's take the same example. Just imagine that you want to talk about employees and employee well-being, or let's take something related to my master thesis. In my master thesis, actually, I interviewed hotel employees, and it is related to emotional labor. Just imagine that you're going to do a study related to emotional labor and emotional intelligence. So to achieve your research aim, you want to interview both employees and senior management team. So the employees, your sample, because employees actually you can distribute your questionnaire to larger sample because you can find lots of people work in front of his service encounters. So then you can develop two different research objectives. One is related to employees, and the second objective is related to senior management. So the objective number one, just imagine that it is related to hotel employees. So in that one, you can say to achieve your research aim, you can say clearly you're going to employ quantitative method for research objective one, but for the objective two, it is related to senior management. You can employ qualitative. So then, what you can do, you can distribute a questionnaire to employees, and you can do in-depth interviews with senior management. So then the result, when you do data analysis, yes, you can employ different techniques. So the questionnaires you can analyze through SPSS software if you wish to, and the interviews that you conducted. So you basically in the interviews, I will explain how to do interviews properly. Basically in the interviews, you had to record. So then after that, you had to transcribe those recordings. So that those interviews you conducted, you can do in-depth qualitative analysis with that data related to senior management. And then after that, you can develop a very fantastic finding at the end. So that's one example for the hybrid or mixed methodology. Any questions before I go to the next one? Or are you listening? No questions.
No, no question up to now.
All right. So the just imagine that you want to do survey, then yes, you can develop a questionnaire and then you can distribute the questionnaire. But the thing is that in that part, that quantitative part, researcher and the participants, they cannot interact with each other. So for an example, in my case, I gave all my questionnaires to front office manager, and the front office manager distributed the questionnaire afterwards after a couple of weeks, and they called me and said, "All right, questionnaires are ready, and come and collect it." So I didn't know who the participants are. So that means it is my findings are entirely based on participants. So that's quantitative, but the qualitative in my PhD thesis, it's in my interviews. I talked to them and then I approached them. I explained my research and then I started to do interviews and I wrote all my notes at the field. So it's not, I mean, we call it as co-creation of knowledge. So the qualitative study, we co-create knowledge. So my insights, also my participants' ideas, based on that, I co-create knowledge. So that's a major difference. But in quantitative, we don't know. Sometimes, yes, you can interact with them, but your involvement is very less comparing to qualitative study. And also, qualitative study you can do through observation as well, and you can do focus group discussions as well. In all that methods, researchers' involvement is very, very high in qualitative study, but in quantitative, it is very, very low. So let's talk about the qualitative interviews. So if you want to do a qualitative interviews, actually, so first you have to develop a consent form and you have to develop a participant information sheet. So you have to approach the person and explain, I mean, introduce yourself and explain about your research. Then after that, get their consent whether they like to participate for your study or not. If they said yes, then you can start. You have to get written approval, but I don't know I mean, you have to check it with the Surang sir because I don't know the process for University of Colombo. But the foreign universities, if you want to do an interview with someone, definitely you have to get written approval from the person. So
No,
after that,
Hansi, we also have the ethic committee. We have to follow the ethic committee suggestion, but basically it can be given through the coordinator, right?
yeah, I think so that must be there because without having ethical approvals, it is
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's ethical for students to go and approach someone and do an interview, collect data. So
So
it's really
now it has been established. Actually, I have to take the approval from the ethical committee of the faculty. There are some
okay.
guidelines as well. While before they are going for the interview, they have to send me the letter that this research will not be harmful for these things, right? So that
Yes,
letter we are going to send them, okay, in due course.
that's great, sir, because you have to, I mean, ethics committee should ensure whether the person, whether the researcher is safe. I mean,
Yes. Research
researcher is safe and the
respondent,
participants are safe.
respondent must be safe, right? So right
Yes,
now I'm requesting my students, okay, right? This is not just lecturing. You can ask any question from Hansi. Hansi will reply you because this is the dialogue based lecturing, right? Now I have seen that notice that the students are silent and you are doing lectures. So then, Miss Hansi, you would not be happy when the students are not asking questions. There could
No,
be
I feel a
two.
little bit awkward then. You know,
Yeah,
so when we do lectures here, they are
yeah,
always asking questions.
yes, yes. That is why
Yeah.
then why Sadhunika, if you have any question, you can ask. Okay, Watson. That is lecturer's side. They would be very happy when you are asking the question, but not disturbing the lecture. But asking the question, then we feel that okay, students are interested in our lecture, right? But otherwise, okay, we feel boring, right? Right.
All right. So if you feel like they're enjoying, that's okay then.
Okay, okay, you can continue, right? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you.
Okay.
So so as Suranga said, yes, it is really important to have ethical approval. So the ethics approval, we basically ensure the researcher is safe at the field, and also participants are safe when researcher is doing the interviews or whatever the research activities in the field. So in the qualitative, I mean, when you do qualitative interviews, so before you start your data collection or before you start your interviews, you have to explain what your research is about and get the formal consent from them, saying that they are interested to join your research. And especially in qualitative research interviews, we record interviews. You have to get written approval from that person to record the interviews. So it's very important. Without having their consent, you cannot record. So just imagine that now the person is happy and the person is pleased to record the interviews as well. Now you can start it. And in between, you can write down notes as well. When you go to the field, please maintain a book called in my researches, I used one book called Memo Writing Book. So in the Memo Writing Book, what I did, I always continue writing all my notes related to interviews, maybe related to each day. I wrote all my notes. So maybe during the interviews also, you can write down your notes as well. For an example, just imagine that. So during the interviews, when you record, so the voice record is there, but you know how a person explain things, maybe the facial expressions, gestures, postures, whether the person is happy when explaining those some areas, you can see that because it's face to face. So in your memo book, you can write down those areas as well, because all this information are related to your uh, theory building or your contribution at the end. So that's one way that you can do qualitative interviews. And now just imagine that your first interview is done with a senior hotel manager, and you discuss about their contribution to enhance the emotional intelligence of service employees. Now it's 1.5 hours long interview. So then the next step is transcribe your interview. Okay, now you have your audio record. So you have to listen to your audio record. I mean, just imagine that you did the interview in English language. Okay, now you have to transcribe your audio record to Word document. There are softwares actually you can do it through the software. You just have to upload your audio, but in my case, actually, most of the foreign countries, professors, I mean, in my PhD thesis, I got two professors. They didn't allow me to do it because they said you have to do it personally by listening to all your audios. Then you get familiar with your data. That's actually a really good way. I also agreed with them, and I listened to all my audios, and I transcribed all my data by myself. Some audios I had to listen to a couple of times. That's fine because it is important for you to get familiar with your data. So you have to record all your data, and then you can revisit that transcriptions. So now you got your Word document. We call it as transcripts. So now you got your transcriptions. You can revisit the transcriptions and correct all grammatical errors as well. Afterwards, what you can do now, just imagine that in your qualitative research related to emotional intelligence in hotel employees or something like that, okay? Now you conducted 15 interviews with senior hotel management, and you feel enough. If you feel like your data, you got got very rich amount of data, then you can stop data collection. We call it as saturation point. I'm not going to explain too much about that because I don't know whether you're going to do a pure qualitative research. So, or otherwise, before you go to the field, you can establish a number like you will do 15 or 20 interviews with senior hotel managers. So after you're finishing all your interviews and after transcribing all your interviews, now you can start data analysis. It depends on the methodology actually you employed in your research. So if you want to do something like grounded theory, you have to do data analysis just after the interview you conducted before you go to the next interview. So that's why I'm saying that like I'm not going to go in depth into these areas because these are related to pure qualitative research, but I'm thinking like you're going to do a hybrid approach. So that's why I'm like simply I'm trying to explain these areas. So after finishing all transcriptions, now you can decide how to do data analysis. You can do it in two different ways. You can use data management softwares like NVivo. Keep that in your mind. NVivo is not a data analysis method. It's just a data management software. NVivo help you to manage your data because qualitative research transcriptions are so long. Some transcriptions are 15, 20 pages. Some are like 10 to 12 pages. So it's like so long documents. So NVivo help you to develop codes, focus codes, categories, subcategories, themes, properties likewise. It doesn't analyze your data. NVivo, NVivo is just supporting you, but based on your thinking, based on your analytical skills, based on your understanding and expertise regarding the topic, you have to do it by yourself. So even in my PhD thesis, I employed NVivo uh, to develop all the codes and code maps and all. At the same time, I did manual analysis as well because it is important. At the end of the day, your theory building is entirely based on the way you think, not the way NVivo think. NVivo cannot think anything. It can only help you to develop your codes and manage the data. But it's really useful software. So you can use NVivo software, but I don't know Sri Lankan students whether you can get the NVivo license. Maybe you can pay for it and you can get it. So it's really useful if you can use it. So then after that, what you can do data analysis with thematic analysis. It is the very easiest way that you can analyze your data. I think I added one slide here related to thematic analysis. Let me find it. I will come back to these areas later. Yeah, here the data analysis using thematic analysis is there. I will explain. So, so after the data collection, can you see the first picture? It is like so much of data in different levels and different ways. For an example, like in my PhD thesis, yes, I discuss about social encounters with people. So although I wanted to discuss about social encounters, my participants they talked about totally different things. I mean, so much of different areas like the places that they visited and the food that they had and the wildlife, pilgrim sites. Actually, those kind of things are not relevant for me. But as a part of my research, I have to transcribe all that data. So it's too much of information when I started to do my data analysis. So then after that, as you can see the second picture, you have to do tidying up data. In that case, to do this tidying up, that's where the NVO software is useful because it's such an amazing software that you can get the help to tidy up your data. So you can do coding and you can develop and like I'm using this language of coding because I'm a grounded theorist. So that's why. But if you use another method, like if you use thematic analysis, maybe your language may be different, because based on your research methodology, you have certain type of a language to use. If you are a phenomenologist, you have a different language to use. So based on that, you have to develop your whatever the code or the focus code categories like that. But in your case, I'm not going that too in depth, so I'm just explaining. So basically you have to tidy up your data. Tidy up your data mean you have to group them with similar characteristics. So just let's take the same example of uh, emotion I mean emotional intelligence of service employees in city hotels in Colombo. That's a topic, okay? So now you conducted interviews with senior hotel managers, and they talk about conducting training and recruitment. Likewise, okay. So now you can see the similarities. So the people who talk about training, that kind of information you can group together. So to group this information, NVivo provides such a good support. Okay, so then you can collect those information and group them related to training, and information related to recruitment. You can group another information related having similar, and then at the end you can see how many groups you got and what are the characteristics, what are the properties of that groups. So you can start data analysis. Next week I will show you my NVivo my data in my NVivo software, not today. So then you can see how we can actually do this data analysis. But I don't think I don't think you're in that stage now. But I think you're about to collect data. Is that so? Oh, you already finished data collection. Hello? Have
Yeah,
you already finished your data collection or not yet?
uh, right now we are about to, that is actually doing the theoretical framework. So I think in another couple of weeks time we'll be collecting the data. Hello.
Oh, right. Okay. So then I will show that software to you all next week. So do you have access to NVivo? Uh, any of
Uh,
you have access to NVivo?
to the software you're asking,
Yeah, for the
uh,
software.
right now we don't, because I don't know how it will be facilitated right now. So once the universities are open, maybe.
Oh, right. Okay. That's fine. And that mean you already, about to data collection mean you already developed your, you already finished writing your introduction and literature review. Am I correct?
Yes.
Or not yet?
Yes. We have.
So already finished. That means you got your aim and all.
Yeah, yeah. Most of them.
Oh, that's very good then. Then it's like 50% done. So you just have to go to the field, or you can do online surveys or online data collection. Okay, that's good. But before you go to the data collection, please finalize your method. At least write your draft methodology chapter and see what is what approach that you want to employ, and also try to find some thesis previous students conducted related to your topic. Related to maybe your topic or maybe your methodology. Then use it as a precedent. Okay, we also do that. Any researcher do that as well. Precedent mean, so if just imagine that you're doing a research related to emotional intelligence, and you can find someone's thesis like mine is available, and you can follow the same structure, and you can justify in your thesis. Okay, this researcher has conducted the similar structure, similar methodology. So in that case, this thesis also employed. Likewise, you can highlight your precedent and you can justify. It's a very good way that you can um, ensure, or you can justify why you choose your methodology and all. Okay, so that's one that you can do. If you Google it, you can, I'm 100% sure you can find thesis. So maybe masters or maybe PhD thesis, maybe based on Sri Lanka or maybe based on some other countries, that's fine. So if you can find thesis, that's really good, because then you can see what type of methodologies that they have applied. So now we are in the tidying up stage, so you can use different softwares, but you can do it manually as well, because this Endeavor thing came, like, I think it's not all than 10 years, I guess. So before that, all the qualitative researchers, they conducted their research studies by manual analysis. So don't worry about it if you don't have access to that. You can do your analysis manually. So if you use mixed methodology for the quantitative part, you can use SPSS, and the qualitative part, you can do it manually. So in the data analysis, actually present a very clear idea regarding your data, and it present very good idea for the researcher, and the researcher can understand whether the researcher can achieve the research aim based on the collected data. But if the researcher feel, oh, I cannot achieve my aim based on this data, this is the time researcher has to go back to the field and collect more data. Okay. So in that case, yes, if you feel like your data is not enough to achieve your aim, please go back to the field. It is important, because at the end of the day, your target is to achieve your aim. So the presenting your data, you can use charts, you can use diagrams, you can or you can use thick descriptions. You can write it in a, like a story, or we call it as narrative form. Like you can write. So you can use different methods to present your data. In my case, as I said, I'm a grounded theorist. So in the grounded theorist, we develop a theory. So theory related to my topic. So that theory must not be available in the world so far. So my theory gonna be the first theory for that subject area. And related to that theory, I'm going to develop a framework. So you know that models, this model, that model, there are different models people develop. So likewise, so the grounded theorists, they develop theories and models. But the phenomenologist, they write thick descriptions. Likewise, you can decide how you're going to present your data. Okay, so in that way, you can present your data based on the SPSS analysis outcome. So it comes with charts, graphs like that. No, so you have to present that data as exactly it is, and you have to write a brief description under each table. That's what you have to do in quantitative study. So if you go to my thesis, you can see. So because I employed quantitative, I employed SPSS, so you can see how I have presented my data. And if you use mixed method, yes, you can use the SPSS data. At the same time, you can do thick descriptions or narratives to present your data. So the coding technique, actually, there are different steps in coding technique. Can you remember here I said straight after data collection, it's like it's too much of data and too much of characteristics in data. Now we have to tidy it up. So the tidied up stage, you can do different types of editing. For an example, the editing, you can use coding approach. So you can use basic code. Terms of people, just imagine that your research, now you interview senior managers, and in senior managers, they're saying that they're talking about conducting interviews, conducting training programs, and they're saying that, okay, we are doing training programs and trying to encourage them, trying to boost their capacity. So these are telling terms like boost their capacity. So I can underline that one. So it is one code. Okay, boost their capacity. So the codes mean telling terms of the participants. So likewise, just imagine that in the same participant talk about many things related to capacity building. So now you can group them together and name it as one focus code. Next week, I will briefly, I will explain this area again. Don't worry about it. But before that, because to explain those things, actually, I want to know how many people going to do qualitative or how many people going to do mixed methodology. Otherwise, no point of explaining those areas. So the coding is actually very easy method to employ, but you have to read a little bit more to understand what exactly what is the meaning behind this coding techniques. So this is the thematic analysis is one way that you can use to do your data analysis. So the first thing what you have to do is become familiar with the data. So that's why I said if you want to do interviews, please record them and please transcribe those interviews. And the most important part is please do transcribe it by yourself. Don't give it to someone else because there are plenty of people that you can pay and you can ask them to transcribe. Don't do that because if you do it by yourself, you become familiar with your data. It's very important for you to get familiar with your data. Then it's very supportive for. It is very easy for you to do data analysis afterwards. So the first part is become familiar with your data. Okay, read your transcriptions or listen to your audio recordings couple of times and do your transcribing data and even the transcriptions. Revisit your transcripts and see what are they talking about and what are the important areas that you have to focus on. And then generate your initial codes. So as I said before, initial codes are the telling terms. So like boosting capacity or morale development. So just imagine that the senior manager, or I interviewed one manager at a hotel, and he's talking about, okay, we are doing training programs to increase in the capacity of the people, and aware them how they have to talk to guests or how they have to do complaint handling. So likewise, when they talk all that things, important telling terms underline them. Complaint handling maybe, increasing capacity maybe, stress reduction. Likewise, they're telling terms exactly what your participants said. So those are your initial quotes. So the initial quotes, you can categorize them with similar pattern or similar characteristics and develop your focus quotes. So then after that, you have to develop your categories and co-categories and categories as well. Afterwards, the final stage is develop your themes. Themes are the larger groups. So under themes, just imagine that in my after interviewing 15 hotel managers, I got 6 different themes. So one theme is training. Second theme is recruitment. Likewise, I can develop different themes. And third theme is teamwork. Fourth theme is intellectual capacities. Likewise, under each theme, you can see what are the categories, co-categories, codes, focus code. Likewise, okay. So the themes are the bigger groups. And then you have to review your themes and see the connection between those themes. If you use NVivo software, you can develop all these things in NVivo and you can develop models as well. But as a researcher, I never allow NVivo to develop all my models because I develop my models by myself because researchers thinking capacity is really important to develop models. So you can review your themes and you can refine and reframe in themes. Just imagine that when you review your themes, if you can feel like, okay, this is not matching with this. For an example, I said intellectual capacity capabilities. So if I feel like, oh, this training and recruitment with those kind of things, teamwork, intellectual capacity is not relevant, you can redefine those things. You can go in depth to your data again and see, okay, what is the connection this intellectual capacity with my study. Likewise, at the end, you can reproduce your report. As I said before, you can develop model or you can write it down in a story writing method. Okay, and then you can explain, okay, most hotels or whatever the place that you considered in your research, they do these type of things to increase the emotional intelligence of the employees. So number one, now you can discuss about the training programs, then you can explain the training programs most of the hotels conducting. They're like this type, that type. So you have to highlight the limitations. At the end you have to discuss about those limitations. So this is very quickly, very briefly that I mean, this is the way that I can explain about this thematic analysis. But if anyone is interested to do mixed methodology or qualitative research, I can explain those areas in next week, and I can show you how to actually do these areas. Okay. Any questions so far? Oh,
Hansika, right?
yeah.
Like two question, I'll try to put it to one. Like as an interviewer, when we are interviewing people, like people might give you a lot of other unwanted information that you want. Like how can we make sure that we are collecting what we want? And like the second question is like, how are you going to perceive really what you want? Like do we work in a, like do we have some sort of a framework, or like how are we going to get what we want from them?
All right. What is your name, by the way?
Madhushan.
Okay. The thing is, Madhushan, when you do an interview, sometimes like that person also providing some kind of or that person also sacrificing their time, their effort. Sometimes they are interested to talk a lot. Even I experienced that in my interview during my field work. People talk a lot about so much of things. Actually, they are not relevant for my study. They talk about the wildlife and the food they had, but during the field work, during the interview, yes, you have to listen to them, but at the same time you have to be smart to direct them to whatever the im- information that you want to get out from them. For an example, just imagine that your research is related to emotional intelligence of hotel employees and what the CDA management is doing to boost their emotional intelligence. So now you're interviewing a couple of interviewing me, a hotel manager, and he's discussing about all other things as well, guest arrivals, maybe how they are behaving, but they are not relevant for your study. Then you have to be smart to direct them to your topic. For an example, now just imagine that they're talking and they're trying to talk about the training methods. Now the training methods are related to your topic. So when they started to talk about training methods, show your interest for that field and encourage them to talk more. Like just imagine that they just briefly mention, okay, we do training methods monthly, that's it. Then you can encourage, okay, it seems like you're organizing a monthly training method. So what type of methods that you employ, or what type of training, I mean, what type of trainings that you do every month, and who are the trainers? Likewise, you can encourage them to talk about that particular area. So that's why always, like, as I said, use some probes. Probes in some different themes and bring it with you. And then you can see when they reach your probe. So when they start to talk about something related to your probe, always encourage them. Ask very broad questions like, uh, how do you feel it? How what it look like? What do you mean by it? Okay, if someone say, okay, we do training every month, then you can ask, okay, that's really good. So how's this training look like? What type of training actually? If you ask what type of training, actually, it's not a good question, because they would say, okay, these are the type of training, like three types of training. Then they can finish their conversation. But if you can ask question like, so I mean, how's this training look like? Then they have to give very broad answer for you. Okay, so it's entirely depend on the person. So you have to be smart enough to do that. The way you can do that with use some prompts. That's how I encourage you to do. Bring some themes with you, and when they reach your themes, encourage them to talk more, and don't ask close-ended questions. If you ask, like as I said, what type of training that you do, they just say, okay, we do this type of training. There are three different types of training. So we do all that three. No, then you can't ask any. I mean, you can ask, but you can't get too much of information related to training if they just give you very close answers. So you have to ask very good questions in that case.
All
Any
right, all right.
question?
Thank you, thank you.
Okay. Any more question? All right. Then in the methodology section, you have to clearly mention that how to ensure the trustworthiness or the authenticity of the findings. Actually, these are very qualitative words, trustworthiness and authenticity. But if you read my master thesis, I discuss about the credibility and transferability. So the credibility that means in qualitative research, the same terms we use in different way, because if I write dependability or credibility, transferability in my qualitative PhD thesis, then my professor would ask, oh my god, what is this? Because we don't use that language in qualitative. Okay, so if you use quantitative research, I mean, if you do quantitative research, you have to add a section in the methodology at the end of the methodology chapter, uh, um, how to, I mean, you have to explain how you ensure the credibility and sorry, transferability in your research. Okay, so in that case, what you have to do, you have to clearly mention that how you ensure the truthfulness of your findings, or how you ensure the truthfulness of your data collection, because people, they do lots of fraud, isn't it? They don't collect data and they just say, right, we collected data. Sometimes they ask their friends to fill their questionnaires, but that's not the way that you have to do a research. So that's why in this section you have to clearly mention that how you conducted data, how did you approach people, and what is the process, and how you discuss your data and data collection and data analysis with your professors. So likewise, you have to clearly ensure how you conducted your research. So that's what we call credibility and transparency. Okay. And also, if it is a quantitative research, you have to discuss about the generalizability of your research as well. So I think last week I simply explained that part. Uh, the generalizability means if someone else employed that research or conducted that research into another context or another country or another area, so that person must be able to get some kind of a similar finding. So quantitative studies have that capacity actually, but in qualitative study, no, you cannot, because qualitative studies it's like more constructivist, or it's more like individual perspective. If I interview 15 different hotel managers, they can come up with totally different insights. So it's very hard qualitative research to generalize. Okay. So the credibility and transferability, basically it's related to internal validity of the research. So if any kind of a things, if you do a project, if you do assignment, if you do a dissertation or PhD thesis, you have to show the validity of your thesis. Okay, so the validity of your thesis, you can show it in different way. One is you can write thick description about your findings, about your results, or otherwise you can use peer review or peer debriefing. Peer debriefing means you can present your findings to some of your colleagues, maybe related to your field or others. For an example, in my PhD thesis, I always explain my results with my friends in health science faculty, because they are not related to my faculty or my they don't know anything about my research. So if they can understand my research, I'm more confident, because they are totally different field. So that's what we call peer debriefing. Or you can do it with the same people in the same disciplinary areas. That's okay. But if someone can understand of someone totally someone studying totally different research area, and if they can understand your findings, that's really good. Okay, so that's another way that you can ensure your internal validity. We call it as peer debriefing. Or otherwise, you can use audit trails. Audit trails mean you have to maintain, as I said, that memo book and write down how you conducted your research, how you entered into the field, how you collected data, and all that. And scan a couple of pages and add them. Okay, and show them, okay, this is how I did it. And also you can mention that you discuss your step-by-step process of your data collection and data analysis with your supervisors and your mentors, and then that's another way of ensuring your internal validity. uh, so the result chapter actually, this is related to qualitative actually, because I developed this presentation for qualitative researchers. In the quantitative study, results chapter must be based on what you found. So maybe you can add all the charts, graphs that you got from SPSS. Uh, but in the qualitative or the mixed approach, if you use, first please write down who's the participants are and the information related to your sample, who they are, what's their background, and how many people that you interviewed. Likewise, give some idea regarding your sample, and also raw data you have collected, from where did you collect it, and from which date to what date. Likewise, give some brief idea regarding your fieldwork. And then what's the data analysis process that you use? You can simply explain if you use coding technique or if you use thematic analysis, likewise. And then write down your outcomes of analysis of the data, or we call it as results and findings. Okay, you can use a chapter called results or chapter called findings. I think in mine I use I use results and find. No, I use data analysis and results in my PhD thesis. So, likewise, designing stage is totally up to you. Now, you under that heading, you can interpret all your results and findings. So, if you use SPSS statistics, you can use all the tables and write a brief description under those tables. If you use qualitative analysis, then after that, you have to do a big job actually in that case, because in qualitative analysis sometimes you have to use direct quotation from your transcripts about what people said regarding particular areas. Just imagine that now your major theme related to your topic of emotional intelligence is training. So now you're discussing about the training, that's your theme. Then you have to get direct quotation about the based on the interviews that you conducted. Okay, direct quotation means uh, exactly, I mean directly, you have to use some paragraphs from your interviews, and these are the evidences to support your findings. Okay, for an example like SPSS, if you do a quantitative study, your table is there, so the reviewers or the examiners can see all the statistics. But in qualitative, how we can prove it? So it's a question. In that case, yes, you have to use direct quotation, and you can show that, okay, now if you can, if your results are evidence based, then examiners can't ask too much of questions from you. Always make sure your results are evidence based. It is very important. And what does the results chapter cover? Generally speaking, raw data and step-by-step analysis of your data, and you can discuss a little bit about data analysis process as well, but mainly in your results chapter, it must be your results, what you found. Okay, so in quantitative, actually, you have to show that how you achieved, or what are the hypotheses accepted or rejected. You have to clearly mention that. But in qualitative, actually, most of the time, surprising results come out. It's very interesting. Even my PhD thesis, yes, it's very surprising results came out, and it's really interesting. But the writing is, yes, it's a bit tricky, but it is not impossible. It's like it takes time. This results chapter takes some time, actually. Mm, I'm not going to talk about thematic structure because I don't think it's relevant. Uh, I want to go to the discussion chapter. Let me see. I hope we got some. Yes, like if you want to use participants' direct quotations on your result chapter, so you can edit, because some information are not relevant. You can edit them. Okay, like those kind of areas you can edit it, because it's not. I mean, it doesn't give any meaning for the reader. These areas actually I will discuss next week because I have another session at 10 o'clock. So before that, I want to finish this, but I want to talk about a little bit about discussion chapter actually. Okay, this one. Guidelines for presenting your results. Always write your result in a past tense. It is important because now this is what you found. It is not what you're going to find. It's what you found. Always write in past tense. And what else? You can use tables and figures or storyline. It's entirely depend on what's your research aim is. And the next most important thing is your discussion chapter. When you do your discussion chapter, please take a print out of your literature chapter because it is interconnected. In the discussion chapter, what you're going to present, it's related to your findings. At the same time, you have to support your argument with available literature. Okay, maybe you cannot find literature exactly related to tourism or hospitality field, but maybe related to banking sector, some literature can be available. So you can have a look. Even mine, like most of the literature is related to health science. I mean, in the discussion chapter, because for my theory and my framework, so no one has conducted that type of research before. So I cannot find any literature related to tourism and hospitality, but the health science, yes, I can. So I have to support my argument and my findings based on that literature. Okay. So we can discuss about these areas next week, actually. So if you have any questions, yes, please do ask. Rest of the other parts I will do next week, and I will show my in vivo data analysis and all other thematic analysis. I'll take some photos of my thematic analysis as well. Then you can get some idea regarding how to do that. Any questions? No questions? Oh,
Madhushan, any questions? Otherwise, Hansika can stop her lecture now.
Yeah,
Next week.
I
Huh?
clarify. I asked a couple of questions in the middle of the lectures. I'm good, sir.
Yeah, but okay, the students now, Hansi, you can go one by one student thesis writing, and if there are qualitative aspect, you can actually give your insight to the students to enhance their methodological chapter.
so do you think like any of them doing pure qualitative research or mixed methodology?
Yeah, what,
Do you have an idea
even though
regarding?
they have a mixed methodology, you can actually, that part, qualitative aspect, you can actually enhance with the students if they wish to do that one.
Yes,
Otherwise,
sir.
okay,
Sir, I'm Hasun here.
yes,
So
yes.
if Miss I can do something related with server areas is for qualitative as well. I think it could be helpful for most of the people in our class.
Yeah, now you are doing Likert
Yes.
scale analysis, and you are going to get the opinion survey, and you are going to have the expert opinion. So then these things actually, the Hansi's contribution would be immensely valuable, right?
Yes, sir. From next week onwards, if she can focus about these other areas also, that would be great, sir.
At the same time, what is my suggestion is, Kasan, okay, you can design, you can tell her that okay, this is your topic, and you are going to do
Okay,
like
sir.
this. How we can incorporate the qualitative aspect into this program, this particular master thesis,
Okay.
right? So then she will explain one by one. That is possible, Hansi, right?
Yeah, that's okay because if you can send kind of like, I mean, not like pages, if you can write down one page or if you can write something in the group, I can see that as well related to your topic and what is the methodology or what's the approach, whether it's quantity or quality, and what you're gonna achieve. So then I can explain where I explain that. I think it's more
I think once you go into the students' thesis and topic and the methodology, there will be a lot of the areas that they have to clear with you, right? So,
but I don't think so. It's practical for me to go to their thesis actually because this is my last couple of months and I'm really stuck with my thesis.
no. You don't want to go. You don't want to sacrifice much time. Only 2 hours time we are allocating for you. If a student wants to ask any question very specific for his study or her study, you can give it insight, right?
Yeah, of course. Of course. That's easy for me as well, because if you can share your research areas, or you can email it to me as well, like one page. So then after that, I think I can do more support than explaining things like this. So if I can know what your research area is and what's your approach is, it's easy for me, sir, to help
Yeah,
them.
yeah, don't take more than 2 hours. This is 2 hours only, I think, enough, right? Because you should finish your PhD, you are the last stage. So therefore, take your own convenience. If the students wants to have some clarification, so if you are free, okay, you can help during this 2 hours, right?
Okay, sir. No
Bec-
problems. If I can do
I don't
something.
like to make you burden because of our students' request, but
No,
this is
it's
actually
no, it's
the
not like that.
sharing knowledge each other. That is very important for the any type of development, right?
Okay, and yeah, and also I encourage you. I mean, if anyone is if you want to do quantitative researches, my research is available, because couple of students they contacted me and asked about the thesis. So then I shared that this is in the research kit, so it is there now. So you can review that one as well. It's important to read previous students' thesis, I mean dissertations. Then you can get some idea how to write it.
Yeah, that's good. But you can share your experience, okay? How you become a best student of your batch, and so okay, these things are very important. If the patient wants to take the medicine from the doctor, it is the patient must ask that medicine. So doctor can't give the medicine without knowing the illness, right? So the student
That's a
must
good
ask.
example.
Huh?
That's a good example.
Yeah, the student must ask question. If you are behaving like this, okay, that's up to you. I
Mm,
have been asked by the students, a qualitative study part must be done. I invited you. So then it is your responsibility, students, to maximize the opportunity what you have been given right now, right? I am
mm.
confident that he has enough knowledge to give you the right direction of your master thesis if you want to do the qualitative aspect. Madhushan, take the leadership. He's the monitor of the class, Madhushan and Kasun. So you can talk with your students, your batchmates, and discuss with all these things and get ready with next week. What question you want to ask from Hansi, on what question you should not ask from the Hansi. So you decide, then this 2 hours could be more effective than today, right?
Yeah, you can let me know is any questions are there or anything else that you want to discuss, like related to research, to focus on like analysis or writing chapters or anything. Then I can focus more on that areas.
Thanks very
I'm
much.
open to
Yes. Anything you want to ask, Madhushan?
Good, sir. Very
Yes.
good, sir. Thank you very much, Ms. Hansini, for
All right.
doing
Thank you
this
very much,
for
and
us.
good luck with your research.
Right.
Thank you. Have a good day to you all. Then thank you. I will leave the session.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you
Okay,
very
thank
much,
you. Thank you
Hansi.
very much.
I highly appreciate your contribution, right?
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Bye.